All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to episode 8 of CheloniaCast. We're already getting up there. It's only been about a month or so, and we got 8 episodes. We stayed pretty consistent with that once a week schedule. Um, Over here, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, so I got a little commitment. These guys have it a little easier, but we've got a really exciting episode and guest today. This is someone that uh, a lot of people know. In the past few years, he's really kind of taken off on social media and started a YouTube channel that has gotten extremely popular, and it is really doing an amazing job kind of spreading the word about turtles and tortoises. Today we've got Brashear from GregsTurtleHaven on, he's going to talk to us all about some of the work he does with his captive animals, as well as some of the stuff that he's done in the field. And he's kind of all over the board. I think he's been in the turtle game for a while. And so we're super excited to have him here and pick his brain about some of the stuff that he's learned over time. So welcome, Greg. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is awesome. We've been saying this, but kind of all these initial podcasts were people that were kind of high up on the list for people we want to reach out to and have a conversation with, and you were right up there. I mean, immediately when we started brainstorming this, like, yeah, we got to talk to Greg because he's
Yeah,
just
very much.
loaded with knowledge. But yeah, I mean, I guess this is kind of the cliche first question type of deal, but sort of why turtles, right? It's kind of as we said, kind of a niche area and a little bit of an odd interest, but we're all kind of united by it. So what first got you into them?
I wish I had asked myself that, like, why turtles? Because it definitely has changed my life. For the most part, I've always had them around in my life. Pretty early on, my dad had an interest in box turtles, and he would drive around, and after it rained or in the morning, and he would say, "Let's see if we see any box turtles," and we would do that. And then, being in Florida, there were when I was there, I was kind of on the tail end of what people would refer to as the good old days when stuff was still abundant and you would still see native species. So, from a very early age, every single day, literally every single day, Florida box turtles, gopher tortoises, literally everywhere. And then, being in Florida, every ditch, canal, if there was, a permanent body of water, there was cooters, snappers, soft shells, striped mud turtles. So pretty much every day of my life, those were what was around. There was also snakes. I mean, I snakes and all the other Florida stuff. So I grew up with an appreciation of reptiles, but for whatever reason, I just always gravitated towards the turtles. And um, I think I think it was the first Florida box turtle that I found crossing the road, and I kept it overnight in a box and just kind of stared at it, because I was like super young. I was like maybe 6 or 7, kind of stared at it for a while, and then we let it go, and I watched it disappear into the palmettos, and like kind of noticed that the way the shell was camouflaged had matched the way the light kind of dapples between the palmetto fronds. And so, like, I just thought it was so cool the way it disappeared in there. And then I knew I wanted pet turtles at some point because, you're young and you want to do that. And I remember it was like if I got a good report card or something in second grade, I wanted I had a science book and I had a picture of a painted turtle in it. I wanted this painted turtle more than anything. And I'd stare at the science book all day. And then, so for my birthday, I got to go pick out 2 turtles, and they didn't have painted turtles. So I got 2 red-eared sliders, and they were Amos and Andy. I think my parents helped me name that. It was like something from like a long time ago. And then eventually I got like a big aquarium, and then we ended up eventually I got like a Western painted turtle, and then map turtle. And then like my dad had a buddy that hatched out some peninsula cooters. So then I started raising up baby cooters, and then so all of that in addition to just what surrounded me every day. So that's kind of a long answer to a basic question, but
It's actually that's a very similar response like that most people have. It's like always something when they were younger, and it was even similar for me. Like the first 2 turtles I had were red-eared sliders. They were actually my neighbors down the street just showed up. They knew that I liked animals at the time, and I would find box turtles in the yard and all the time. Not as much anymore, but I used to live in like a pretty decent spot in the woods, so there would be box turtles every once in a while. But I mean, my neighbors showed up at my front door with a pair of red-eared sliders, like a male and female, and I was like, all right, and I kept them for like 5 or 6 years.
Now, did you take that interest in like reptiles and turtles and pursue it academically, or has it always kind of been like on the side of like your main career sort of like
I
line?
think
Or
I think I wanted to pursue it academically, but I mean, I graduated high school in '99. There wasn't a lot available back then as far as pursuing that kind of thing academically. I would have either had to, I think maybe UGA had a program, and I know they still do, but um, I mean, to be honest, in high school, like for me, I felt like I was in prison, so I was just trying to get out of school. Like, I mean, there were times where I wanted to drop out and stuff like that, and I was focused on animals, but that was kind of, I kept that kind of more behind the scenes in my life, and a lot of what was going on back then was skateboarding, and so for most of high school, I just wanted to be out of school and skating, and then in my free time mess with animals, but. Um, so I ended up like not even having a college plan, and then I ended up just going to school to basically to satiate my parents. I went to school and got a degree in television, but I've always loved photography and video anyway. Because I started that because I was filming and shooting photos with my buddies skating. We would just trade off, taking turns with the camera. So all of that ended up being what I went to school for, and ended up being kind of more of like a career path. Um, I wish I wish I had been able to do the academic pursuit of it, but it just really wasn't in the cards for me at the time. But I've always read the books and kept it. I try to keep up with all that stuff as good as I can, but
It's
Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but your work professionally as a wedding photographer, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I did through the 2000s. I mean, I did television shows, music videos, all of that stuff, and then now I really enjoyed like just shooting weddings, like taking photos, doing video. I can do both, and it's nice because for a while I had a job as like a valet at a VA hospital. So you're there at a hospital, which is the worst day of somebody's life, and like that's such a heavy thing. And then when you shoot like a wedding, dude, that's the best day of somebody's life. So every time I work, it's a party. And I also have a new boss every single time I work. So sometimes you get an awesome boss and it's a good time. Then sometimes you get a boss that's kind of a bridezilla, but that's all good too. Like, cause as soon as it's over, you're good. So I enjoy it. It's fun. And it's a really good creative outlet because I can make them all kind of a little different, or I can collaborate, especially if you get like a creative couple, you can kind of create something special, custom tailored to them. I watched a lot of like spaghetti westerns when I was a kid, so sometimes I shoot weddings and I find myself shooting it like it's an old like Ennio Morricone, or like shooting it like an old spaghetti western or something.
Yeah, that's cool. That's actually that's how I want to pay off my college debts if I could do that
Yeah,
in college.
there's really good money in it, and it's never gonna go away. People are always gonna get married.
It's interesting to see. I mean, I feel like that kind of goes toward the follow your passion. If you got multiple passions, sometimes it's easier to follow one of those things as a gateway into the other. And I think that you've kind of certainly, it seems like, embodied that in terms of bringing your experience and work with the camera to your turtle work through your YouTube page and your Instagram. But I guess tell us a little bit about. I remember I've known you for a while on Instagram, but in the past few years, you started a YouTube channel that's gained a lot of traction. And it's a pretty unique thing, right? You're doing both the captive side of things, but also going into the field and showing us kind of the actual habitats and everything. And there's certainly a lot of crossover there. But tell us a little bit about how did that kind of start up? What made you want to go kind of take that out there and start a channel?
I mean, I'd had I mean, since YouTube started, I've always had some kind of YouTube channel. Like when YouTube first started, I had a channel that was just skateboarding, and we would travel and go to really small, like podunk towns. And the challenge was, can we find something to skate in the middle of nowhere? So that was kind of the first one I did. And I got used to kind of talking to the camera and doing all that goofy stuff. And then kind of through time, I ended up just having one that was more focused on just kind of a catch-all, and it's literally just my first and last name. So some of it's skateboarding, some of it's herping, some of it's whatever. And then Greg Whitstock, who owns Aquascape, invited me to Pondemonium, which is like their big, conference each year, and it's all the builders that build ponds and all their new products, and then they bring in YouTube personalities. And he invited me to come and help Kenan Harkin, Camp Kenan. We were supposed to go through all the turtles in their personal collection and health check them, ID them, kind of go through the whole thing for a video. So it was like me and Kenan hanging out for like, I think 3 days or something like that. And Kenan was there, Blake was there. There was like a bunch of YouTubers. There were some people I didn't even really know, but it was kind of funny watching guys run around with cameras and talk to them and stuff. And then talking with Kenan, he was actually the one that encouraged me to pursue directly making a channel. So if you want to give anybody credit for me making a channel, it was him, because he talked me into it, because I wasn't really taking it that serious, but it did look fun. So that's kind of where it came from. And then, the rest of it, it's, once you start doing it and you kind of have a purpose, for me, like I'm a kind of creative person. So it was like, okay, how can I make each one progress? Can I make them get better as I go? Can I do things that are different? And it's like the captive side is kind of, everybody and their dog right now is kind of beating that horse. So, I'm not reinventing the wheel on like anything I'm doing really. So, I have the way that I like to keep things, which is outdoors and natural. And I work with a lot of native species because essentially my goal is for them to live in my backyard as wild as possible. So, I even take it as far as letting leaves accumulate in the bottom of the pond so it's full of leaves, so that they have a natural thermal layer like they do in the wild. A lot of people will clean out their ponds because they don't like that look. I personally like that. I like to go into my enclosures and not necessarily know where they all are. Or I like it when I don't see a turtle for a month or two and then he pops up and I'm like, hey, So I like that. And so that's kind of my take on the captive keeping. And then there's already people doing the herping end, but nobody really specializing in turtles doing it. And, and I know enough about other reptiles and amphibians. I can kind of cover other stuff, but there's other people that are doing that and doing that well. And so it's kind of more fun for me to focus on turtles and then periodically bring in these other animals and elements. So.
And it's cool too when you do captive videos about kind of captive keeping, but then you go out into the actual habitat and people can kind of just see it for themselves and they get ideas. And you also, I think, kind of bring that in. So it's really unique. It's not just that here's how you set up the tank and whatnot. It's more kind of let's go see where they're actually at and let's look at that. So
yeah, exactly. And from going out and herping and seeing the types of places where you're likely to find them, that gives me a better insight each time I make a habitat or I want to adjust it. I see like, okay, male musk turtles really like a deep pool just downstream of a riffle. Okay, how can I make that happen? Like when we designed the aquascape system in my yard, that was like, okay, I need a deep pool downstream of a riffle. And so they were able to build that. I need overhangs for alligator snappers because they like to go way up under banks, and then we were able to build that. So that's kind of the goal too, is to stay learning and to stay observing what things are, and then to try and import that on a small scale, but back into like a captive collection to just to make their lives better.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you have to like maintaining this pond? It's really quite impressive how big it is.
So the aquascape pond, the only maintenance really is what I'm going to go through in the next couple of weeks. Like right now it's 20 degrees, but when it warms back up and it stays warm, I have to go from one end of it to the other, and it's like 60 feet long, and just pull all the leaves, pull all the algae, once the turtles no longer need that thermal layer. So that's probably the only maintenance, because other than that, the system takes care of itself. That's what's so amazing about their products and what they build is essentially what they've done is there's a bottom end and there's a top end. And get my hand in the frame. So there's like a bottom end and a top end. And each one goes 4.5 feet below the ground, below like the gravel layer you see. So they go into the ground and then they reroute the water. So each one reroutes it underground and holds so much that it's like a spring. So that water maintains a warmer temperature than my other settings because so much is always in the ground. So that part is really neat too. And then all of that, those deep reservoirs, it's all filtration. And then it's all biological filtration done with beneficial bacteria and microorganisms and stuff. So once they build that and it's run for like a year, the whole thing is essentially a living, breathing system.
Yeah.
Now my other ones, I have to do maintenance on my other ones. My other ones, I've got to every now and then like clean filters. I've got to do a full clean out on them once a year. There's a lot more work to that, especially tubs are the same way. But the aquascape system is really awesome because once they set that up, you really don't have to do anything. I think maybe later this year I'll be due to just open up the pumps, rinse it out with a hose, put the lids back on, and that's it. Wait another 2 years.
Yeah, it's important to have the filtration there. I don't think people realize how much turtles poop. It's like
yeah,
a lot.
Well, and it also depends on what you feed them too.
Yeah.
Those naturalistic ponds though, like the ones Aquascape does, there's typically this misconception. A lot of people that don't know turtles well, they're like, oh, that must be a ton of maintenance. But as you've said, it's actually probably easier than keeping stuff in a 120 gallon tank. You don't really have to do much once it's set up. I mean, those initial stages is going to be a lot of work, but later on, it's definitely kind of self-sustaining.
Yeah, I mean, you have real, true UV because you're outside. So the bigger the system is, the waste from the turtles can become beneficial to the system because now you're feeding into, the bacteria, the algae, and all those kind of things. And one of the things that keeping turtles that can kind of give you the hardest time is if you're feeding a lot of pellets, because turtles don't really digest pellets that well. If you look at real turtle waste, if you look at what comes out of the back end of a cooter, it's going to look almost like the aquatic version of what comes out of a tortoise. You'll be able to see, the digestive plant fibers and things like that. If you look at what comes out of an alligator snapping turtle or a musk turtle, you'll see fragments of shells, bones, crayfish pieces, sticks, plants. So that stuff's normally is how that's supposed to come out. When you look at how waste from pellets comes out, it's very pasty, like toothpaste, and that stuff kind of coats the inside of their digestive system. So then when they eat sand and gravel, that's when people have issues with impaction. And that waste doesn't really break down as cleanly either as the other kind of waste.
I think the ultraviolet, like the natural UV, is like super beneficial to all turtles.
Yeah, you get different colors out of turtles just from putting them outside.
Yeah, I've witnessed that firsthand with some. I have a box turtle that was given to me like 4 or 5 years ago now, and the first couple of years he was just kept inside in pretty poor conditions, and I had all these serious. His shell problems were pretty bad, and he had like all kinds of fungal problems with his eyes and everything, and like people were telling me all this stuff I needed to do, and I'm like, no, I think what I need to do is I'm just going to set him up outside, and he was literally collected like half a mile from my house as a hatchling by the people that gave him to me. So he's native to this area, should be able to handle it. And I barely really had to treat anything. I just had him outside, and he responded rapidly and all of his health problems went away. And now he's grown, he's like tripled in size in the past couple of years, and he's one of the most like outgoing and healthy animals I have. So, but he lives outside year round. He's brewmating right now. So.
Yeah, like that's one of the things is I always tell people like the best way to keep a turtle is just put it outside. I mean, I hardly ever have health issues with any of my animals, especially like things I've had like long term. I almost never have any problems with the times when I have problems is when somebody waits to give me an animal. You know, they wait until it starts to not do well, and then they say, oh, I need to give this to somebody that knows more. Well, then they're basically giving me a rundown sick animal, and who knows at what point in its, you know, health it's at. You know, some stuff you just can't turn that ship around. So, but a lot of stuff, I mean, you know, they worship the sun for a reason. It's, you know, it's the great big battery in the sky, and it kind of does everything that they need it to do. And, you know, they just do so much better. They need the elements. You know, people think that they're reptiles, so they need to be hot all the time. But they, you know, if they're native, they need the cold too. I think people having issues with captive stuff that just keep it indoors year round, you know, you're depriving them of seasons and cycles that they're evolved millions of years to have. So I think when you take that away, you know, who knows what kind of health implications that has.
I've done a lot of work at the Turtle Conservancy over the years, and that's one of the things that they do. I mean, they have got, I think, at one point 700 plus animals. At this point, I think it's more like 500, but still a lot. But they're getting stuff consistently. And one of the first things they do with animals that come in sick with certain symptoms is just put them outside in kind of a quarantine enclosure. And I think it was about 70% of the time, typically within a few weeks, those issues just start to resolve, because you are really treating them just kind of where they should be. I mean, there's obviously situations where kind of veterinary intervention is necessary, and you need to do some stuff and get more invasive. But a lot of times I think, yeah, like you said, just nature's the best medicine for it.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I've seen it time and time again. Somebody gives me an animal that's not that good. If it's an aquatic turtle, I have like a waterland tub it goes in. If it's a tortoise or a box turtle, then I either have an area ready or I make a makeshift one and just put it outside, give it a hide so it can feel safe, and then just for weeks, just leave it alone. Just leave the poor thing alone, and we'll see what happens. And, you know, most times it does better. You know, it's funny. It just, you know, it's counterintuitive because it's not a dog. You know, you can't just be like, oh, my dog's sick, we'll put it outside and leave it alone. You know, like, you can't do that. But, you know, a turtle, you know, reptiles, I mean, obviously with snakes it would be harder, you know, but I'm pretty sure it would work with a snake too. It would just disappear.
Yeah, it might work, but the snake might be gone. But just found a way out of the enclosure or something.
Yeah, that's tougher to do. Well, we've talked about some of the captive stuff and some of your YouTube stuff, but one of the things that I automatically think about, I think a lot of us here kind of can relate, is snapping turtles. That's the kind of the logo, the name of the brand, and I'm seeing a shell in the back even, and a photo in the back. But this is one of your, I guess, specialties is both common and alligator snappers. But I guess you've been doing some cool work in the field recently. If you could tell us a little about that, I'm pretty curious about some of the updates and what you've been seeing out there.
Yeah, so last summer, I got in touch with Dirk Stevenson. Basically, Grover Brown said, you know, you need to email Dirk Stevenson. He would really like to meet you guys. I think you would get along. I sent Dirk an email, and in typical Dirk fashion, took about a month or two to respond to the email. And then we went out and we did like just basically like he said, hey, let's, you know, meet up and let's talk snapping turtles. We'll put out some traps and see what we get. And we set a trap, I think the first day, and we got a juvenile, which was a recapture. And the crazy thing with that was that it was a Swanee alligator snapping turtle. Last time it was captured, I believe it was like in inches, it was like maybe 5 inches, and it was 12 inches. And that was in 2018. It was first captured 5 inches. And then this past summer, it was at 12 inches. So that turtle had grown, for an alligator snapper, a phenomenal amount. I wasn't aware that wild turtles, macrocheles could grow that much. So that was really cool. And then, we did another day of trapping after that. And we brought a school. Valdosta State University has a herpetology class. And so they came out, and we had like 24, 25 kids come out. And it's funny, some of them had never even seen a wild turtle in their life. And one of the first things they saw was me and Dirk pull a trap with 3 adults out of a river. And so I was, pulling the turtles out, and I was showing them all the features of the alligator snapping turtles. And then we also had a spiny soft shell, and then some loggerhead musks. And, I'm big on teaching and sharing information. And, I want everybody to like turtles, I'm sure, you guys are the same way. And so by the end of that day, every single student had held an alligator snapper, had held a soft shell, a loggerhead musk. They had learned all about it. They'd also helped us process the turtles. So weigh, measure, pit tag, and then, we filmed the whole thing. And I guess Dirk was satisfied with that or impressed with that. And, he invited me to be a part of a contract with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. It's like a 2-year contract assessing the population of Chelonia alligator snapping turtles in Georgia. We started last fall, and it's been going really well. It's been fun because I've never trapped turtles, especially never I think I've put out the little promars before for musks and stuff, but I'd never done the big hoop nets, like the 48-inch. And so, my mind is, okay, if I was able to look through the water, or if I was able to, snorkel, the places I would look. So combining that with Dirk's experience trapping, we were able to really kind of refine trap placement, and it's worked out really well because I think we've gotten more turtles just in the last fall. Just last fall, I think we got more than he's gotten previously, just by us kind of combining our knowledge, which has been really fun.
I bet the turtle trapping is really fun to be a part of, and probably learn a lot more about how it works. And it's not just the more I at least read into it, it's you can't just randomly throw the trap in the water. There's you kind of have to plan specifically where you're putting it and think about it from the perspectives you say, where's the turtle coming from, where are they actually going to be, and there's always limitations. You can't just set it, and you can't set it on the bottom in 20 feet of water. It's got to be in somewhat shallow so they can still breathe.
Yeah, there's been a learning curve, and it's funny because it's the people that are good at it. There's almost an art to it, like a sportsman's art. And one of the things you have to do is you walk down to the water and you say, okay, you're scanning. Okay, there's some down trees that are obvious. But is there a tree that's on the bottom that maybe we don't see? Is there an overhang? Is there a limestone structure underwater? And so then, okay, this looks good, but then you need to look at the surface of the water. Is the current going to pass through the trap? And then, you're not looking to put the trap at the good spot. You want to put it upstream of the good spot, right? So you want that scent to travel directly to the spot you think that they're hiding in, or a path that they're going to use when they walk upstream, because they don't necessarily walk up the deep channel of the river. I mean, they probably do, especially the biggest ones, but they still need to come up and get air. So they're going to kind of work their way more along the edges. So you can have a spot you think is good, but you may not really get a lot in a trap if you put it there, because the scent may, there could be an eddy and it just swirls around the trap and then doesn't go anywhere. So there's a lot to take in as far as factors, and you have to pay attention to weather. Is the water going to rise? Is it going to change how our trap sits? Is it, obviously you either want to tie your trap up nice and high, or you want to have a float, because you definitely don't want to drown a turtle. You got to take into account, is there, 50 yellow-bellied sliders basking on the other side of the river that are just going to eat your bait before the snappers even have a chance to? Is there going to be alligators? Are they going to get in there and eat your bait and destroy the trap? And then are there rednecks that are going to steal your trap? There's just so many things, and it's really cool. It's fun because it's fun to set it. And then for me personally, I don't sleep the whole night, because I'm just I'm thinking about, we could place 14 traps. I'm thinking about all 14 of them and okay,
it's got to be awesome when you're pulling it out of the water and you're just that anticipation.
Yeah.
How many do you get? How many have you gotten? What's the most that you've gotten in one trap?
I think we've had 2 that had 3 in them. So 3 turtles is about as much as I think that they tolerate each other, but I think when they get into a trap, they kind of get a little panicky. So I think 3 is really crowding a trap, especially 3 adults. And the times we've gotten 3, they're usually, 30-pound, 40-pound turtles. I think maybe the biggest was shy of 50, but you're not going to get 300 pounders or 390 pounders in there. I just think that's just kind of crowding it up too much. And I also think once you get two that weigh that much in there, they're going to start bending the trap. And I don't even know if the funnel will work correctly for a third, in the scenario of three giant ones. Luke Pearson would probably be a better person to ask for that because he catches giant ones all the time.
What type of bait do you guys use?
It's just whatever fish heads that Dirk gets, and then you can use sardines or not use sardines, but for the most part with alligator snapping turtles, bait doesn't really matter as much as freshness. They're not like a common snapper. They're not gonna eat on something that's old or rotten as much as like a common snapper would. A common snapper, you could kind of just throw anything in there that's gross and they'll go for it. But alligator snappers really prefer fresh. And then the other thing you want is something that's oily, so it's going to consistently put out, scent. So usually a fish head is the best. Like if you've ever cooked with a fish head, like, people will use it in soups and stuff because that's where all the flavor is. The best piece of meat on a fish is the cheeks. So, a fish head will just sit there and emit oil. Like when I've gone with the FWC guys, they use, big fish heads. And they'll do just a single fish head in a trap, which is really funny because I'm just like, is that enough?
Is there usually any bycatch in the traps, or do you tend to just get the alligator snappers?
With Dirk, I think the most common bycatch is big Florida soft shells and yellow-bellied sliders. But we have gotten a Sewanee cooter, loggerhead musk turtles. One time we had a trap that just had loggerhead musk turtles crawling around on the outside of it. Spiny soft shells. We have one of the rivers actually has spinies and Florida soft shells together, which is really cool.
Right on.
That's interesting. The going back to the bait question real quick. One of the ones, I don't know if you guys have tried buffalo chicken yet, but there was actually a publication by Eric Muncher and the group out, I think, in Texas, and they demonstrated that it was, compared to other types of baits, significantly more effective at catching large alligator snappers. I don't know if that would cross over. I'd imagine just because it's pretty aromatic and the seasoning or whatnot, but that might be a fun one.
You have to imagine that let's say you're this big, this big turtle and you live in a riverine environment. So at the time period when you get active and you come out from under the bank, you're going to be sitting there and you're just, waiting for what kind of scent is going to come down, what's going to be interesting, so a buffalo chicken, chicken already checks one box. Okay, that smells kind of good, kind of interesting. And then you add, buffalo sauce, which is like vinegar and probably a bunch of other goofy stuff. And so you've created something interesting that they're going to be like, well, what is this? So they're going to go check it out. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that have used things that are really surprising, like honey smoked bacon. I know people have used that, and that works. I know people have used, you mentioned the buffalo chicken. I've also heard like barbecue chicken, a few other things. And I think it's more about, can you first get them interested to draw them out or to draw them in close to the trap? And then, do they get, because, you're talking about, they can feel the throat of the trap when they go in. So they know that they're going to have to squeeze themselves in. So is the juice worth the squeeze, right? So is it going to be worth it for them to go through this hassle of, first, what is this thing that this food is in? Is it worth me trying to press myself in here to get it? So if it smells really good and is irresistible, hey, if it's buffalo wings that does it in Texas, it sounds good to me too.
One thing I wonder about the turtle trapping, and I think I discussed this with Michael last time I was with him, and we talked about just with trapping alligator snapping turtles in general is, what if the bigger turtles might not always have as much as an incentive to go to the traps as some of the smaller ones, because a lot of the big turtles are probably dominating certain parts of the river that are really beneficial. Like maybe there's like when we looked at the recent publication from the Swanee River, like all of like the middle channel of the river, like they did a sonar scan, and like the middle part's like 30 feet deep, but it's got all these limestone overhangs on the bottom, and has this bed that is probably just full of mollusks, and that runs along the river. And I'm like, that's probably where a lot of the bigger males are going to sit there, and they might have less of an incentive to leave if they're sitting on a mountain of mollusks they can just graze on all day. But while the small ones take what they can
I've
get.
been there, and I've seen the place where, you know, we went there to set traps, and it ended up raining on us, so I ended up not getting to be a part of the trap day for that because we had to cancel. But I got to see that part of the river where the biggest males that FWC gets, and to me, it's a miracle that they get any in the traps because the river is so wide, it's so deep. Like the fact that they're able to get them in there, first off, tells you that there's a lot of them. If you're able to get, first off, the numbers that they get, and they are consistently getting, new animals, each year. So there's a huge population there. And then they also have the ability to draw them in from, like you said, like 30 feet of water, possibly even more when the water's up. And then, yes, like you said, getting them interested and pulling them away from a natural diet, something that's easier for them to access. You're really, again, it comes back to, bait and position of a trap. Are you in just a right spot? Those guys have been doing their trapping for, I think, over 10 years now. So they've got their spots they know works. When I ride with Travis and Kevin, Travis remembers each little tree they tie off to, and they're like, oh yeah, we got that 80-pounder right here off this tree. And then, the next one we go to, they're like, oh yeah, we got 2 in this trap, So it's really cool to see, the places that they go. Cause those guys, they have it down to a literal science.
You've gone out with them as well too, right? I guess we can give people a little context. Recently the alligator snapping turtle were split into 2 or 3 different species. That third one is arguable, I guess, but regardless, the Suwannee variety, the one that we're talking about, is sort of the most distinct, and there's not a lot of argument whether that's a full species. But so you've done work both with the kind of looking at the upper Suwannee and seeing if the species is in Georgia to what extent, but also on the middle and lower sections all in Florida, right? And that's kind of...
Yeah, I've been to pretty much every part of the Suwannee alligator snappers range. So, and been able to pretty much I've been able to find and see turtles from, I'm like trying to remember, but yeah, pretty much every part. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, like just the variation even within that single species, depending on where they come from in the range. Like the ones in the Santa Fe look different than the ones in the main channel, the Swanee, like depending on their diet or environmental conditions and things like that. And it influences their size too. Like the lower Swanee in Santa Fe has some giant males that are pretty common, but they don't seem to be as much in some of the other areas. But
yeah, well, and it's like that in, whether you want to call it the other 2 species or the, the upper Flint River turtles look, different than the lower Flint. And then the Chattahoochee River, which is the next river over, is still considered part of the Apalachicola drainage. But, those turtles have kind of their own look. What it comes down to is these turtles don't cross land. They don't, they're not like the common snappers. So they get into these focused genetic lineages in the areas that they're at. And, they're just breeding over and over and over. And so you're going to get, certain characteristics are just going to, evolve and get more focused on each, isolated group within whatever part of the river system they're in. The ones above the fall line here in Georgia, the rivers are shallower and swifter, so they have a bit narrower of a shell. They're a bit smaller. It's rare to see one, over 90 pounds would be a huge one. And then they, are almost exclusive mollusk eaters from the time they're like 12 inches up. So they get these just, big mallet heads, and they go around the bottom, just absolutely tearing up the bottom of the stream, digging around for whether it's introduced corbicula or native mussels. They're going to give loggerhead musk turtles a hard time. So and then you go over to, I did notice in the alligator snapper I caught in Birmingham, Alabama would be the Teminki eye, because that's part of the mobile drainage. They have their own look, and then you get over into Mississippi and they look a little bit different. As you go west, they all start to kind of, each river drainage kind of has their own appearance, and it's all subtle. I mean, you have to be an alligator snapping turtle dork like me to notice it, because most people that study them, they, even Dirk, like, to him, they kind of all look the same. I have to like point out to him, like, oh, this is this, and the more you look at them, the more you see it.
It's interesting how that happens. You start to, if you just over and over again, like with pond turtles out here, I've seen probably thousands at this point. And I can just kind of, I'm only looking at one population. I'm talking about more like sexual dimorphism. If I see a male, female, it's just easy to tell that variability. But like, you've done so much work with them over the years that you just have, it's an incredible eye that you have for kind of that variation. I imagine as a photographer too, you've kind of got this built-in, I don't know, I compare it to like Ken uses the software ImageJ. It's like you can map those little points on the animal without a computer program, and you just kind of see the intricate details, and it's really, it's a cool it's a cool thing.
I think it's great.
I'm just, like you said, maybe it is because I'm a photographer and I have an eye for detail. I have like a psycho, just obsessive personality, and so like when I get focused on something, I want to know it inside and out, and then when it's something that I'm passionate about, I just take in every last bit of it. It's I noticed with the alligator snapping turtles from the Birmingham area in the mobile drainage, there's a last vertebral scute that has a tendency to kind of stick out more like a little shark fin, whereas the other ones don't really have that. The Flint River turtles, have one, sometimes two super marginals, and then you get lower Flint and they start to develop more into three. I've got a carapace at my house that has no super marginals from the upper Flint. So, just noticing little things like that, there's just subtle characteristics, and, it applies to all species. Like we were talking about with that river cooter picture, river cooters further north, it's rockier, and they got to fit their heads in between tinier, rockier crevices to feed on, plants and stuff. And then you get to the coastal plain. Like if you look at a coastal plain cooter, they have like a blocky head. Red bellies have blocky heads, and then the Suwannee cooters have a much more, kind of chunky head because they're feeding in more of an open area on like eel grasses and stuff like that. So it's just, it's also just getting old and just seeing stuff over an expanse of time. So
I think the fact that you paired it with, like, you have this really like honed interest, and you're a really good photographer too, so it actually brings it out. Like people can really see it through the pictures and everything. Like that's like the first. I think I've been seeing those for like 5 or 6 years now. Some of the pictures you've been like sharing and taking, and I've never really seen. Barely anybody else does that. Like really takes good photos of these obscure or more unknown turtles and brings it into the light. Like I think that's really good.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, like, again, it just comes down to kind of just being obsessive and just being like, okay, I have that feeling, and I don't know if you've ever had this, where like, if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it right. So like, I'm like, I better do this, and I better shoot a photo of this, or, put it out there. And, and again, and it also comes back to, I didn't go the academic route. So, I'm not publishing a paper, but I can put out some photos and, find ways to share information and, do my part to help make people aware.
With the photography, when you go out and you're taking pictures, is there like a project you're working on, like specific, like morphological, like turtles that you want to like photograph, or is it just kind of like whatever you find, or how do you like approach like that sort of side of things?
Sometimes it's random, and it's just as simple as I'm going out looking for stuff and I have a camera with me, and it's just like, man, this is, even if it's something that's relatively common, like a loggerhead musk turtle, every now and then I see one that I just I just really like the way it looks or something like that. Or if it's an alligator snapping turtle, like I either like the habitat, like I want to be able to, I have like a mental checklist, I guess. So it's like, I want to show habitat sometimes. Sometimes I want to show like a particular feature of the animal, or sometimes it's sentimental. Like I just want to capture a moment that I really liked. And I always tell people this too, especially these days, is like, nobody needs to take a wild turtle home, but you can take a photo home. Like there's turtles that I've caught that I'll never see again, but I love it because I have these amazing images of them that I captured, and I get to reflect back and be sentimental on that moment. I get to look at the animal and study the photos I took of that animal. I look at the habitat photos I took. So there's like kind of a lot of dimensions to it. And then but like I said, sometimes it's just as simple as like, man, that looks cool, and I'm just taking a picture of it.
Yeah, sometimes you don't even notice that something's significant until you come home and actually look at the photograph, Greg. I think our first interaction together was that I found this odoratus. It had I think it had the humeral scute that's fused with the pectorals and its plastron. I just thought that was really weird, and you came up and kind of talked to me about that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I also think that you should document any observation you think is, even if you think you're possibly wrong, or like just document all of it. Like keep a file. I mean, I have multiple folders in my phone of just like random stuff I see that maybe doesn't pan out now, but maybe down the road might turn into something. I have a whole folder on my phone of some traits that I've noticed in the Sewanee alligator snappers that nobody's published on, and they're basically secondary identifying characteristics. So I'll probably, through Kevin and Travis, see if I can partner with them on publishing that, because as it is right now, it's all based on photos I've taken of turtles I trap. But I've noticed some things that every single one of them so far has it, and then the other alligator snapping turtles don't have it. So little things like that. It's like it's just something I happened to notice in some pictures, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna start focusing on that and see if I notice that. And you, like I said, you can do that with anything. You had that odoratus, and a lot of people will catch odoratus around Georgia and Atlanta, and they think that they're hybridized with loggerhead musk turtles. But our odoratus, when they get old, they go from having stripes to having spots and a mottled pattern, and having like lighter colored skin. Whereas you go down to South Florida and they're jet black, or you go up north and they're jet black. So, there's just little things that we're all constantly learning. We're not done learning about anything in this world. We've only been here just a blink in time.
That documentation is actually very similar to. I have that kind of mindset with a lot of different things, especially with like the musk turtles. And like anytime I find one that like I'd almost always take pictures of every single one, and just I have hundreds and hundreds of them on my phone. And like especially when it comes to like their megacephaly and trying to like to the extent that it's exhibited, and then like, all right, what habitat are they in? What specifically are they feeding on? And the better pictures of that, like that's why when I first got down to some of the springs, I was like, everybody I was with are like, why are you so obsessed with these loggerhead musk turtles? Like you're getting like dozens of videos and pictures, and I'm like, I can't stop. I'd like every time I would get one, I have to examine it and like look at the huge heads and just like.
That's the thing, and that's what you do is be that guy. Be the guy where people are saying like, why are you so interested in something that they think might not be as significant. Maybe people think it's not as significant because they're small or because they're seemingly abundant. Like for years I was obsessed with Sudemis and river cooters, and I still am. I still love them because there's so many subtle differerences. You can almost figure out which river drainage they came from based on appearance. And people were always like, they were like, oh, why are you into sliders? And I'm like, well, they're cooters, but it's being that guy and being interested in something that everybody's overlooking. Like Viv and Carl call it the low hanging fruit for a reason, because it's the stuff that everybody's walking past or not really looking into. And sometimes there's some really good stuff going on there. And I think you paying attention to loggerheads and springs and what's going on with the skulls and the development that they have. And I think that from what I've seen with loggerhead musk turtles, those turtles in those springs and the ones here in the upper Flint, even though they're considered the same species, like, man, they're vastly different. There's a lot of different physical characteristics that are between those two areas. Like, they're very, very different. So be the guy that notices stuff and document it. You know, I think if you had a big red sore on your taint, you would take a picture and send it to a doctor, right? You know, you'd be like, you'd want to know what that is. So, you know, be like that.
Yeah.
That's what it is to be a naturalist too. I think a lot of times in this day and age, there's a lot of, you know, oh, fancy, I'm a molecular biologist, I'm this, I'm that, whatever. And there's something to be said for that kind of thing. But when it really comes down to it, really the best naturalists in history, and I think it's going to be the case for many years and centuries to come, are the people that really kind of, like you said, dive into those minute details and really exploit that. And just to kind of bring it back, I guess, to the snapping turtles and the documentation there, there's a lot of value in just the kind of documenting morphology and the morphological differences. When it comes to the paper that was written on the subject where they split them into 3 species, there were some things I think there that we just need more data in order to answer kind of the Apalachicola snapping turtles versus the Western lineage. I don't know if I think a lot of the issue right now is there isn't necessarily enough information out there. That paper used 2 different morphological characters essentially in their statistical analysis, and then a limited amount of genetic data. I think that realistically, in order to get an answer, we need just more kind of things. So the stuff that you're documenting in terms of the morphological variation is something that, in terms of an analysis of speciation, if there's another review, that's very beneficial data. And just to kind of have more of it, it's probably more useful than molecular work, and it's something that needs to happen.
Yeah, and going to that paper where they split them into the 3 species, they based a lot of it on cranial morphology, which that's a good place to go. And then, like you said, it was limited genetic work. I think we're at a point now where we're able to go way more in depth with that. And then one of the things that they used was the scutes over the tail, the pygal bones, and you know that was a bit of an imperfect science because, yes, in the Sewanee alligator snapping turtle, most individuals, it's got like a really wide kind of lunate shape, and that's the dominant trait for that species. But, you know, just because a trait's dominant doesn't mean that there are not individuals where it's not dominant. And I've caught I've caught 2 or 3 individuals. I have a whole folder of caudal notch variation. And I've caught 2 or 3 where they look just like one from the upper Flint, little narrow triangular ones. And then I've seen ones from the Apalachicola drainage that have a really wide caudal notch. I've seen Westerns that have that. So in those, it's not a dominant trait. It just pops up randomly. But so that was like a little bit of an imperfect way to do it. Apalachicola has a huge caudal notch variation depending on where you find them. And then there was a rebuttal paper by Folt, and he leaned heavily on a paper talking about cranial morphology. And one of the things that paper that he leaned on was saying that there was an overlap, and they were basically saying turtles from this area were considered Apalachicola, but they're Temminckii. And actually, that paper was incorrect. They used a creek that drained into the Choctawhatchee River, and they were saying that was Temminckii. And that's actually the creek that drains into the Choctawhatchee. The Choctawhatchee is an Apalachicola river. So that paper was actually factually incorrect. And then Folt leaned on that mainly for his paper. And then, but Folt was correct in assessing that the caudal notch variation wasn't enough to separate the species. So Florida still treats Apalachicola turtles as a separate species on a conservation basis. I recommend Georgia does that. Georgia, you know, we'll see what they do. I also think there's a population of mobile drainage turtles because we do have a river on the far west side of Georgia that goes into Alabama. You know, there's no like checkpoint in the river where somebody's not letting alligator snappers through there. It's just nobody's caught them there yet.
I think that's a really good point too. very recently, like you and several other people started finding, a lot of people don't seem to have a great understanding of the alligator snapping turtles, just their basic ecology and how they actually move and exist in the river systems. They're not really planted in one spot. They're not always just going to sit motionless on the bottom. They'll move upstream, and they don't require slow moving, seemingly swamp like habitat. That's not really like, they can thrive in that, but that's not their MO specifically. Like, it's really like riverine habitat that they'll go way up into the tributaries, even like larger males. Like that one group in Texas, it was not Carl and Viviana, but whoever the other guy, John, I talked to him a bit. The ones that caught that 200-pound Taminkai, they were trapping everything. Like they had it pretty right. Like they were trapping lakes, tiny little streams, and that's why they were so successful. And they were going to places like, well, these rivers connect to places we know they're at, and nobody's looked for them here. So why wouldn't they be here? We need to see if they are. And a lot of other groups didn't seem to have that mindset. They seem to be like way too conservative about it. They're like, oh, they're probably not going to be in here, or oh, the river is too rocky or it's too shallow.
Yeah. I think that comes to just experience. I think the groups, I think you have two ends of experience. You either have, we've always done it this way and we're going to keep doing it this way, you know? And then you have inexperienced, and they learned from the people that have always done it a certain way. So, you know, I can only speak for me personally and people that I know, but my preferred way to find them is walking around and looking at the bottom and reading the bottom and being able to see where they hide during the day. They leave, you know, if you can see the bottom where they dig into a bank or go under a log, it's almost like a gopher tortoise burrow. There's an apron of sand, and places where they frequent, you know, they leave evidence. So if you have that ability to look for that, that's going to help you. And then the guy was right. I mean, if he's going to trap everything, like all kinds of habitat, you know, it's like betting, you know, like the more you try, the more you're going to get. You're not going to no risk taken, no gain, you know? So, I just think, you know, they're super cryptic turtles. And then depending on where they're at, they have different ecologies. You know, here in the upper Flint, they really congregate towards shallow, fast moving water. That's where you find most of them. When you get to like slow open water or soft bottom, which most people traditionally would think is good, you get like, you know, maybe a single individual or something like that. Here, they really congregate into the fast, rocky stuff. Now, other parts of their range, they're going to be focused, you know, look at like the, you know, kind of the heart of the alligator snapping turtle range traditionally, most people would mind, like a bayou. Big, swampy, you know, slow moving, you know, it's almost the exact opposite of where I find them. But that over there, that's their preferred habitat. And then you get into Texas, and I think the Trinity is fairly deep and muddy. It's not clear. It's not particularly clean from what I've heard. And I don't even think there's like a lot of mollusk life in there. So they're adaptable, you know, and they're going to become specialists to where they live.
I think that's one thing I'm going to say about that is a lot of they're most well known in like the heart of their range out there too. Like when anybody thinks of alligator snapping turtles, they think of them from like bayous or something. They don't really think of them. They don't generally think of them from other places as fast. And I think that leads to a false belief that they're ecologically just very almost the same as a common snapper, just larger. But
yeah.
If anything, they're a lot more like a musk turtle in their ecology and the way that they'll specialize on things. Well, common snappers never really seem to specialize on anything. They always seem to just tear up whatever comes first. They just go for it. Like they don't seem to have any preference. And
the common snapper is like the monitor lizard of the turtle world. You know, they're prowling, they're investigating. You know, when they're active and they're hunting, I mean, they're just moving all over the place, poking their nose into everything. Anything that moves is potentially a meal for a common snapping turtle. Anything that's been dead is a meal for common snapping. I mean, they really are like a monitor lizard, and they're really intelligent. I don't think common snapping turtles get enough credit for how intelligent they are. A lot of people just think they're, you know, just a dumb snapping turtle, and you know they process and they think, you know, very quickly, and they're, you know, but they couldn't be more different from an alligator snapping turtle. morphologically, behaviorally, just their entire being. They're very separate, but I think because they look so similar to the average Joe, they get kind of lumped together.
And sometimes they mix too. I'm curious about your experience with hybrid snappers, if you've ever seen them in situ before, or what you kind of know about those.
To my knowledge, that doesn't happen. I've been to a few streams where there's one, and I've gone to it a lot, and it's a flint drainage stream, so it's full of alligator snapping turtles, but there's a big man-made lake next to it, and so the common snapping turtles will go back and forth. They'll utilize both habitats, and I remember one day I caught a common snapper, and I shot some photos of her. Nice looking, female. She was very photogenic. And then the next time I came down there, she had been eaten by an alligator snapper. Just you could tell by the imprints left on the carapace where he had bitten down and then let go to readjust and get another bite while he was eating her. You could see the V shape, and then the notch where the hook of the beak was and the carapace, but basically flipped her over and then just stripped her apart from the plastron and then parts that could break off. But I just don't think they get along in the wild. I've seen at another site, one I went to with you guys, there was a common snapping turtle trying to get underneath a bank, and then it all of a sudden came out, and then it actually went up onto land and kind of like shut down, just stopped moving and everything. And then there was an alligator snapping turtle under that bank, and it kind of went back under when it saw me. And because they utilize undercut banks, both species, I think that's maybe a point of friction between the two, and that they won't share space. Alligator snapper turtles will share space with each other, but they won't share space with a common. So for them to hybridize in the wild, in the millions of years they both existed, and because we now know that they can, I'm sure it has happened. But I think it's like ultra rare. The situation where it's happened, for example, my friend that passed away, Fred, he has like a 90-pound male Apalachicola and a bunch of Florida snapping turtles in a saltwater crocodile pond. And there's no other thing for that turtle to mate with. Like there's Florida snappers in there, and he would mate with a 1980s printer if you put it in there, but there were Florida snapping turtles in there, and that was the option, and it produced viable offspring for actually a period of years, to the point now where now pretty much everybody has seen those. At this point, if you're in the turtle world, you've seen that there are alligator snapper hybrids, and they're weird. They're different. It's kind of like I have a hybrid between a map turtle and a river cooter, and you get like a split personality. And it's the same thing with those guys. It's like the defensive behavior is a split between the two. You get the gaping jaw, but you also get the kind of rocket powered neck. It's a shorter neck. Some of them will actually lure. Mine doesn't lure. Fred gave me one that I found in a caiman pond. So it seems also that no two are exactly alike. Some lean more, macrocheles, some lean more callidra, some are like a perfect 50-50 split. It's bizarre. And, it feels like Jurassic Park a little bit. And people that are into the captive stuff, there's a lot of people that are into what's really different. If they're into morphs, a lot of times they're into hybrids. So personally, to me, they're one-offs that are very interesting. They have sentimental value to me because they came from my buddy Fred. But I don't necessarily think we need to be like making those.
Yeah, I think alligator snapping. I think in the wild, like if it would happen consistently in the wild, you'd think you would see someone find one at some point. I've never heard of anyone finding one in the wild. It's only under those artificial conditions where like there's a male with a bunch of female common snappers, and well, he has to make do with what he's got. So he just starts going to town with the female commons, but even then, it's more likely he'll eat them than mate with them. Like after a while, like because Pritchard had at one point he had a giant male like Western, this one that was gifted to him by Redmond. Like there's a bunch of pictures of it. It was like that one that was like 160 pounds or something, like just a giant male, and he had it in this like tub, and then he found a small like 10-inch Florida snapper crossing the just crossing his yard, and he threw it in that tub overnight. I don't know if he realized what tub he threw it in, but it was all that was left was shell fragments the next morning. I'm sure as soon as you put those two together, the alligator snapper went to town and just ate it.
Yeah.
But they're monsters that the fact that they can do that. Like common snappers don't seem to have that much of an incentive or even the jaw power to really do much to a lot of other turtles. Well, there doesn't seem to be much that an alligator snapping turtle can't get to.
One of the things that we talked about when we were in this July or past July was Florida snapping turtles. That was pretty interesting. You've noticed a lot of there's some documentation of like the tubercles on the neck are longer than the Florida snappers and things, but you've noted some other kind of morphological variations and even sort of you mentioned kind of a clinal variation from the, I guess, Gulf Coast of Florida and upward. If you could talk about that a little.
Yes, the Florida snapping turtles are interesting because, again, it's a low-hanging fruit thing, and it's noticing minutia and the details kind of thing. As you mentioned, they have longer, more pointed tubercles on the head and neck. Common snapping turtles, the little more rounded tubercles don't actually come up as far onto the head. With Florida snapping turtles, those long pointed tubercles, they come all the way up to the the musculature attached to the supraoccipital. So from the head down, they've got all these long tubercles. And then if you were to look at their carapace, the second and third vertebral scutes are really wide. And that's because typically Florida snapping turtles have a bit wider and more compressed head. So like if you were to look at it from a profile, it's a little bit thinner. And if you look at it from the top, it's a little bit wider. They also have like a bit more developed neck muscles, like their necks shoot out faster than a common. So it seems for them to withdraw all that, the ribs had to widen. So those vertebral scutes, the second and third vertebrals, are wider than they are in a common snapping turtle, and they're about the same size as the coastal scutes. And then when you look at the tail, the Florida snapping turtles have 3 rows of those really developed osteoderms, whereas the common snapping turtle kind of has just like one main row of well-developed osteoderms. So looking at those things, you can really kind of see like, oh, okay, they are morphologically, unique. And then on the west coast of Florida, especially you get around like Tampa area, they get really dark. The tubercles can be like really, really long and kind of a unique shape, but darker skin. And then you go east coast, and the lower you go down the east coast, they get kind of a lighter color. You start to see more of like an orange tone to the carapace. And then a buddy of mine herps around the Everglades a lot, and we've been noticing, I'm trying to compile photos from people that have been there, that I don't think I've seen an Everglades Florida snapping turtle over 12 inches. They all seem to be really small down there, and I don't know if that's because most of the time that water's pretty shallow that they're in, and they don't need to be big. Maybe it's a food thing. They don't need to be big. I know the Everglades striped mud turtles are also smaller. I think the Odoratus from down there are smaller. So I'm not really sure what that's about, but that's another thing that, is one of those where I'm kind of seeing what's going on there every time somebody sends a photo, but I've never seen a big one from down there. So Florida snapping turtles, if you exclude the ones from the springs, average smaller than the common snapper.
Yeah.
But you get into the springs and they get massive. But I think the ones in the springs have a lot more northern snapping turtle genetics.
Yeah, actually, talking to Dr. Johnson, everybody who runs the surveys in some of those areas, a lot of them think, or at least this is what he said, that they grow so fast down there, they're barely in a juvenile stage, like because they're only finding ones that are like not far after hatching or like 16 plus inches. Like they're finding huge adults and like smaller ones. So he thinks once they hatch, that spring is such a constant, perfect habitat year round that they can just ramp up their growth. And they do kind of resemble, a lot of the time, they do seem to resemble the northern ones a bit more. But about like what you said about the width of the carapace was actually really interesting because at CRI, Pritchard had like he probably had like hundreds of Florida snapper carapaces, and they were all a lot wider. One of them was ridiculously wide. We called it the frisbee because it was. Remember this one, Michael? It was
The
just
frisbee,
about 16
yeah.
inches wide, and it was less than 15 inches long. So it was like significantly wider than it was long, and it was really flat. Like
Yeah, I've seen that, especially in the really, really old male Florida snappers. They'll just keep getting like wider, and then the back kind of like it's like they reach a maximum length, but their shell keeps getting wider. And you know, like how turtle shells grow, like the bone keeps ossifying down the fontanelle bones. And it's almost like as that's happening, the shell is just like, we're gonna go this way now. And you know, like I've caught a few, and I had a video I put out last year herping in Florida, and I caught like a bunch of Florida snappers in one day, and I caught this really old male I've caught on a couple trips down there, and he's the same way. He's almost the same width as he is length, and his shell also kind of, they get older, and it kind of, as it grows and gets wider, gets a little flatter and a little flatter, and so yeah, they do kind of like look like a frisbee or like a UFO or something.
We're coming up on time here, but we've got like one more question. But I just want to, Ken, you wrote about something a while back about how there was a study that was done that showed that there was essentially just one haplotype of common snappers that was shared across a large kind of swath of the distribution. I think it's kind of interesting considering there's a lot of like clinal variation. I wonder how that, it seems like that would hint at the fact that maybe there's a lot more to look at. I don't remember the specifics of that paper. Maybe, Ken, you could talk about that a little more if you remember.
It's yeah, that was quite a while ago. I can't say I remember the specifics of that paper. Yeah. But yeah, it's another testament to just how adaptable the snapping turtles are. They can deal with pretty much everything, you know, whether it's heavy pollution or, you know, streams or swamps. They're just genetically predisposed to just take care of everything.
That's awesome. Are you in a bunk bed?
It's not a bunk bed. It's actually, there's a table like underneath here.
So. Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks like
yeah.
you're in like a treehouse. That's cool. Yeah, common snappers, man. I've seen them. I've literally caught them in large puddles before. I've caught juveniles in large puddles. I've caught adults in, I mean, negligible habitat. I mean, it's like somehow they're eking out an existence in some stuff that, you know, I'm almost wondering if they're feeding on stuff on land and just dragging it to water to be able to swallow it.
I wonder if they do actually. What if they're consuming vegetation or maybe even small animals on the land and then dragging it back into the water?
Back in the day on Turtle Forum, there was somebody that had shared some photos of one eating, I forget the name of the plant, but they had photos of one leaving water and eating shoots coming out in the spring and dragging it back to water to eat it. So they have been observed doing that.
Interesting. Well, yeah, okay, we've got, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, a lot of it could also just be due to like how much they migrate. You know, they can migrate through brackish water, they can migrate through fresh water, and that really allows them to like mate with a lot of individuals over a large swath of area. That could also hamper like the genetic diversity of these animals.
That's like how that's a good point with the saltwater, because when I'm out looking for diamondback terrapins, and I find them in great abundance in certain areas, but occasionally I do find common snappers in there, and I find them dead on the road, and I'm always surprised. I'm like, what in the, like, they can apparently tolerate like something. It's almost like 50% seawater. Like they can breed and feed and like grow successfully in that. So it's just weird to see one there, because I'm used to seeing. I mean, I see like 50-pound cow-nosed like stingrays swimming through the water, and I've encountered sharks. I've seen all kinds of cool things in the water that you'd associate with marine life, and then there's just common snappers in the mix.
They're closely related to sea turtles as well, so it's kind of interesting to see where that's going to go over the long term. If they're going to, I mean, I imagine the sea turtles have entered the ocean in multiple radiations, and so we might be seeing kind of the real-time evolution of that. Well, I guess one of the things that was interesting with alligator snappers in that Folt rebuttal, they mentioned the potential that there was kind of migration between the, I guess, easternmost extent of the western lineage and the Apalachicola. I'm not sure that I was buying that, because that's a pretty,
that was the stream I was referring to. So yeah, he was saying that he was referring to that stream, but it's solidly part of the Choctawhatchee.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, their reasoning behind that, just to begin with, I wasn't aware that the stream that was the case, but the reasoning behind it just wasn't really believable to begin with in terms of
Yeah.
that would mean they'd have to go about 70 miles in the ocean, right, to get.
Yeah.
That's
But
not. I don't think that's happening with them. Like, you'll catch
yeah,
them.
it's interesting.
That's like the distance between the Swanee and the next big drainage is like, I think the next big drainage is the Steinhatchee or something, which is also really far from anything that potentially has Apalachicola. Like once you get to the Ochlockonee, there's a several drainages right next to it that they do have turtles in there, but they're just not studied. Like they've been caught in there. We don't know anything about their population size. I think you told me, Greg, that they like Kevin and them caught one in the Wauchula or something, and that they do exist in there. But those drainages are all so close together, it makes sense. But once you get like 50, 60, 70 miles of ocean between them, I don't really think they could cross that effectively.
Yeah, most of the ones that I've seen documented that have been found on a beach or in the ocean, they beach themselves and they're super highly stressed. They're basically shut down. They're overloaded with salinity and stuff like that. I mean, they do get them occasionally in brackish estuaries, but it's usually really old individuals and the population's just super low out there. Like they really don't, even though they can handle brackish water, it's definitely not preferred habitat, and definitely movement through the open ocean once they reach it is definitely limited as well.
All right, well, we're coming up on time for questions here, but I've got one more, I guess. Greg, in terms of, I'm curious what like the most, if you had to pick one turtle trip you've taken, what would be like, what's the most memorable, and then any future plans that are significant that you're looking forward to?
I mean, if I'm gonna pick best turtle trip, I'm gonna definitely go bang for my buck, and that is going to Mississippi and herping with Grover. I mean, when you go to
It's
that
hard
part
to
of the
beat.
U.S., that is just, I mean, that's the mecca for turtles there. I mean, the highest diversity. I mean, just so much stuff to see. I hadn't actually looked for turtles in that area before, so that was, I mean, it was fantastic. I was able to get like lifers. Like I caught a smooth soft-shell turtle. I never thought that I would catch one of those with my bare hands. Lifers, southern painted turtles, Gibbon's eye map turtles, razorback. I mean, just so many things that were so new. And then it was snorkeling, and it just, every single part of it was so fun, so amazing, and everything just kept happening. There was never a dull moment. So that definitely was probably my favorite turtle trip for sure. And then what I'm excited for, I'm excited to continue the alligator snapping turtle trapping in addition to just going out and herping. I would like to do a trip up the East Coast. I'd like to come visit, where Jack finds diamondback terrapins. I'd also like to visit maybe a couple captive collections, Anthony and Chris Leone. And then other than that, just kind of keep doing what I've been doing and trying to refine it, make it better, make it interesting. Just keep kind of sharing, turtles with people as best I can.
You got to come out west. We'll find some pond
Yeah.
turtles and desert tortoises at some point.
Yeah, I know. And I've got a bunch of buddies out there in the skate industry and stuff that, they always ask when I'm going to come out there to go skate and all that stuff. So I definitely want to go out there and be able to enjoy both of my interests while I'm out there.
For sure.
Yeah,
All right.
If you come up the East Coast, there's actually like in the summer, there's a lot of really good things we could find up here. Plus, like you said, people, Anthony, Chris, Maurice, there's all kinds of people up here. So.
Oh yeah, Maurice is the best.
Yeah, no, he knows some even more spots to find things, but yeah.
So Jason, I think you've got some viewer questions. We did a little viewer question, and then after we play a little game at the end. So I'll explain that after we get some of the viewer questions.
Yeah, I'm pulling them up here in a second.
All right, I gotta play some music.
Ken, are you in Athens right now?
No, I'm actually in Alpharetta right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm still in still in high school.
you're
All
feeling
right,
the
I got
cold.
them pulled up here if you want to get going.
It's been so cold.
All right, go ahead. Jim.
The first question is from Garcia Reptiles 42. I think we did kind of cover it, but it was thoughts on the alligator snapper and common snapper hybrids.
I think we kind of
I mean,
covered
yeah.
it.
I mean, my
And then,
thoughts. Go ahead.
If you want to give your thoughts, I just had the second question ready when you're good to go.
Yeah, my thoughts are, we've already kind of covered it, but in summary, I would just say that not likely to see or find that in the wild. In captivity, I think it's always better for captivity to move in the direction of captive breeding. So if people are captive breeding, even hybrids, they're not taking stuff out of the wild, which there's benefit in that. Obviously, you wouldn't want hybrid animals released into the wild. I mean, you really don't want anything released into the wild that's captive. But I have my personal opinion that if you're going to focus on captive breeding, do it in a way that goes in a helpful direction. I think hybrids are, for me, they're a novelty. For some people, I think some people maybe look at them as a way that, I can't have an alligator snapper, but I can have a hybrid. But most places, I think, legally still will treat it as the, protected animal. So I don't know. We'll see how all that stuff plays out. But, at the very least, a super fascinating animal to observe.
Right on. So Parker Gibbons has a second question, and he asks, how healthy is the AST population in the northern parts of their range?
What's up, Parker? I love Parker. He's a cool kid. So in my opinion, from what I've observed and in the northern part of their range, so we'll say where I've been in the upper Suwannee, we get a good amount of turtles in the upper Suwannee. Obviously, you're talking small tributaries. Sometimes, a stream that's 6 or 7 feet wide. Sometimes, 18 inches deep. We get them in that. We get them in the rivers. And then when you go upper Flint River, nobody. The thing with the upper parts of these tributaries and in the northern part of the range is when they were commercially trapping, they were focused on the honey holes and what was good, and also being close to the I-10. So I-10 is where they were shipping them to Louisiana to butcher them for Campbell's soup. So they needed to be close to that highway, and that highway runs through the southern part of the state and through northern Florida. So they were really trying to is basically when you're doing a job, right? You don't want to do more work for less money, right? So you're not going to go north where you're probably, and especially in people's minds back then, there's little or no population. They're going to focus on lower Flint River. It's big, it's wide. You can get multiple boats in there. Your refrigerated truck can wait by the dock. You can shuttle back and forth, checking your traps, move the turtles. Truck takes off, another one comes up. Everything's functional. When you get up into the northern part of the range, it takes 4 hours to get to I-10, 4 or 5 hours to get to I-10 from the northern part of the range. It's not economically feasible for a business. So nobody really looked for them there. They also thought they were a coastal plain only species. They thought that the fall line was somehow magic and that they just wouldn't come past that. And so it's been a great thing. Above the fall line, they have robust populations. There's a handful of locals in a lot of areas that may know that they've been there. And have had a negligible impact for the most part. You go to the next set of rivers over the Chattahoochee, and then you go to over Birmingham, upper part of the Mobile River. They are there. The further north you get, those rivers, the temperatures get a little bit cooler and a little bit cooler as you get close to the source where they come out of the mountains. So temperature does seem to impact the densities. Again, that's why they're more dense the further south you get. But I believe most rivers where people have looked for them and then ended up finding them, the Alabama Turtle Project, they get new individuals every single year when they're trapping in the same spots. So they're finding that, in the northern part of the state, they're getting alligator snapping turtles. So the kind of ignorance in trapping during the commercial period has really been a benefit to those animals.
One thing, just something quick I was going to add to that is like so like there's still there's been some work lately, like in the real northern parts of the Westerns range, all the way up into Illinois and all that. It's still not as much, but there are records of massive individuals even from up there. Not very often, but this one like tributary in Illinois, like one of the farthest northern localities you can find them in. Apparently, like there's a picture floating around. It's like stuck in it's one of these turtles in a tub that like they'd always stick them in there, and it was supposed to be 170 pounds, and I don't really doubt that based on the picture, but it was at least a huge turtle, and they caught it and like someone was fishing and just hauled that out of the river, and I mean it's just a classic looking Western, but it always raises the questions like how common are they up there actually, and it must be it must be good habitat if they can get that big. And Pritchard used to think they would just wander upstream their whole life, but that doesn't really make any sense.
Well, they're one of the most, if not the most cryptic large reptiles in the world. You can have them. You can have a creek run through your backyard, and you can live there your entire life and never see one if you don't know what to look for. If you don't go out at 4 a.m. with a headlamp and a flashlight, you're probably never going to see them. And even though like 100-pound turtle sounds big, they can cram themselves and fit themselves under things, and they can be so well hidden and just so in tune with their environment. You never know they were there. So I think I think Illinois was doing a survey a year or two ago, and they were looking for their radio track turtles, and they ended up finding a naturally occurring wild adult female, which was like a huge find for them, and they weren't even expecting that to be there.
Yeah, that was. I think I saw that was like a 50-pound female or something, like a pretty decent sized one.
It's hard to put into words the experience too. I mean, we were out there with Greg in early July this year or last year, and we were not finding much. And about 3 a.m, I think we were coming around the corner on a little kind of path to the forest, and Greg turns around. He's like, "There's one," and just darts in there. And Jack and I are sitting on the bank for like 5 seconds. We couldn't tell what was going on, and then we see you pull it up, and it was a massive 90-pound male, big one in there. So it's just hard to put into words that experience. It's just amazing.
I'm not a fan of that particular individual. He broke my ribs one night with Noah. I was trying to get him over a tree, and he pushed himself backwards, and those marginals went into my ribs and broke them. And I think I told you guys this, that year when I caught that male, he was so well fed. He felt like he was filled with gold bars. He was just impossibly heavy. And I think when I caught him with you guys, it was like he was a good bit lighter. So there's like a lot of fluctuation in weight with those guys. But yeah, I caught him, and I was like, it's this guy.
Yeah.
It's a powerful animal. All right. Well, we've got a little game we play at the end. I can explain this quickly here, and we can get right into it. But so we like to do a little kind of trivia at the end, and I guess we can go guest versus the hosts, I guess. Just a little friendly trivia match. So we both come up with 5 questions about something that's turtle related, and then just ask each other, and we can just trade off 5 questions. Got 2 minutes to come up with something, I guess, and just anything you want. The goal here, obviously, is to, I guess, teach people, just pull out the most random stuff possible, and kind of get some stuff that wouldn't necessarily make it in a normal conversation. So I'll set my 2-minute timer. I'll get the ambient music going here, and we can get going. So just 5 questions on each end here, and we'll come up with something. All right, boys, what are we thinking?
I got 2 questions already.
Oh, am I supposed to be coming up with questions for you guys?
Yeah. We each come up with 5 questions.
Yeah.
Like us 4 will get some, and then you'll get some. And don't feel like go like absurd and crazy as you want with them, because that's what everyone else is. That's kind of what we've been doing, but we try to tailor them to the topic.
Okay. This is good. This is good television right here. All of us writing stuff down.
I know.
This is where you put your turtle room commercial.
Yeah. Okay. Once I get my questions, I'll.
It should be like Anthony and Chris playing basketball right now.
It just pans to like no music or anything, just like a camera of them just going.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay, I've got one. I think you'll know this one. Okay, I'm trying to keep this like related, not go crazy here.
All right, I got two. I sent to the chat.
Wake up.
Just send them to the chat, and then we should be good here. All right. Okay, we got Ken or Jason with one. I'd like to shout out to our sponsors of this episode. Nah.
I'd like to shout out to our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Go with like a 20-minute ad. Jason, I kind of come up with one.
Jason, you ready?
Maybe like if one of you two want to come up with another one. Not gonna lie, like my brain's just been focused on like Ohio amphibians and fish and stuff for like school related reasons. So I having a hard time here.
Wow.
You're good.
Well, I have family in Kentucky. That's kind of close.
Kind of, yeah. That's like
I might be able to
You
talk
could throw
about
in
snakes.
Jason. Maybe you could throw in something like from that area, kind of spice up the questions. I mean,
right on. Okay, is it cool if I like throw in a frog question? Is that too far out of left field?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Oh, actually, Ken, that's a good question. I think I know the answer, but
well, yeah, actually, that is a good
know
one.
the answer.
So wait, am I supposed to type them, or I wrote them on the back of a card?
Oh no,
Yeah,
we're only
we'll
typing
just
them
say-
so we have a reference to speak to. That's
Okay.
all right.
I think.
So, okay, I think Jason can throw it in. I guess we got 6 this time. You good to go there?
Yeah, I put one in, so
All right.
we have 5.
All right, so we can start this. I guess, Greg, if you want to go first.
Oh, okay. So do you want me to do all 5 or just one at a time?
We
kind of
do
do one and back and forth.
Sure.
All right. So my first one I kind of borrowed from you guys, but I know that you guys, Jack and Michael, I know you guys take trips. Ken, I've seen that you go herping. So I'm gonna ask, what is your best trip/field experience?
I guess I can answer that I mean, it's going to be vary between us, but for me, there's like several different things. Like finding that alligator snapping turtle last summer was definitely one of the best things I've ever done. And then that was definitely one of the best. And just that whole trip, we just found a lot of species I'd always wanted to see and never gotten to see until then. Like we saw some peltifer, and I think I found more Florida soft shells along the way there or something. But that, and then the turtle survey I did back the turtle survey from a few months ago, that was insane. So things like that have really been just the best for me lately. I'm sure everybody has different answers, but
Go ahead.
I was waiting for you, Mike. I thought you had something to add.
The Southeast trip was fun. I think I have to say the Madagascar trip is probably that's going to be hard to beat.
Well, yeah.
But that was probably my favorite. But in the United States, by far, the Southeast trip we took this summer.
I shouldn't be too long, and I might be able to get out to the Galapagos, and then that might take the cake. But yeah, the experiences in the Southeast by far are the best.
Ken, Jason, rapid fire.
Yeah, real quick, I guess last year I got to go up to like the Toledo area and I got to see northern map turtles for the first time, which was really crazy and it's kind of cool too because I was like up there looking for Blanding's turtles, and we were coming up on this like trail that ran along some river, and my mom, she looks over at the river and she's like, "Are those common snapping turtles because their heads are so big?" And I'm like, I don't know. It's like it's a river. Yeah. So I look over, and sure enough, like there's just a crazy number of northern map turtles like bobbing up. Luckily, I was able to find some that were basking on a log to actually get some decent photos of. But just seeing like a Grapnamese and in like the home state was just, I was ecstatic. So that's probably like one of the highlights of my herping adventures.
That actually, quick thing, the very similar thing happened to me, and that was last summer. I went to New Jersey, only an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from my house. My whole life I'd wanted to see northern map turtles. Never actually really. We saw one in Alabama, but it was way far away. I don't even know if I got a good look at it before I went in the water. But we went down this river in the Delaware River drainage in New Jersey, and they're all over those small creeks, like on both the Pennsylvania and New Jersey side. Like they're feeding. The creeks look like perfect habitat. It's crystal clear, like mountain fed like waters. And we caught tons of them, and that was an awesome experience. But
yeah, I'd love to go on a trip with you guys, and I've yet to see a wild alligator snapping turtle. That would be perfect to see. In retrospect, though, I think one of my favorite trips is actually just here in Atlanta. I was having a slow herping day, walking through the swamps, and then when I got to the banks, I looked down on the grass. There was 2 common snapping turtles. They were actually like mounted on top of each other on the banks, which is really bizarre because typically they mate in water. I don't know what they were doing. I tried to take a photo of them, but they scurried off and they got scared. I want to see that behavior again. That was really weird.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes you'll get 2 males just locked in combat and they'll be completely oblivious, and then same could be mating as well, because the female, for the most part, snapping turtle mating is not super consensual, so usually the female's just trying to get away.
Yeah, the males wouldn't have.
All right,
but
Jack, did you want to hit him with our first question here?
I'll just say I think this is my fault. I think I didn't explain this well enough, or I don't know, but it's like we have like 5 or 6 like trivia questions, but so if you wanted to like quiz us essentially, but I don't know if that's.
I'll ask most question. We'll just go from there.
Oh, ask like the scientific name of something.
I guess. I mean, you'll see. Like, we'll ask one of ours, and then you'll get an idea for.
Okay.
Okay. Who wants to go?
I came up with this one. I said, until last June, from which drainage did the pretty much undisputed largest macrokellies on record by carapace and skull measurements come from? There wasn't a weight, but by carapace and skull length, nothing else was close.
I'm pretty sure that would be a Sewanee drainage turtle. As far as what I know has been at the CRI and what I've read on in literature. So
yeah, it's that one. The carapace length from that turtle is cited in papers everywhere, but they don't. There was never a weight for that one, so they just pull weights from captive turtles and pair it with that carapace length. But
yeah,
we don't. I still
are kind of.
They haven't actually finished the. So I mean,
I was just saying, like, the captives. Like, I typically with captives, I don't really take much stock in. Anybody can fatten a turtle up.
Yeah, exactly. The weight hasn't been published for that 200-pound alligator, like Western. So until the morphological data, so that one might not even be this long, but it might be longer. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, Greg, hit us up with one.
Well, now that you asked like a serious scientific one, I asked stuff I just thought was going to be funny.
That's fair too.
Yeah.
I just was going to ask, what is everybody's worst experience with a turtle? Like getting bit, getting falling into the water, whatever.
I can go real quick. Okay. Sorry. So last summer, I was like out in this little lagoon area in my neighborhood, just my like not smart ass or whatever, like brought out my DSLR, and I was like gonna try and take photos of just the Midland painted turtles on my kayak, and I got close enough to one to where I was like, oh, I think I'm in reachable distance, right? So I went to grab it, and I just completely drowned my camera, so I had to like run back. Luckily, I was able to like salvage. I don't even think I was able to salvage anything, but that was kind of sucked. That was a few $100s down the drain, but it happens,
Jason, that happened to me. That's how I
Really?
lost my first camera lens. Yeah, it was a giant female soft shell that I tried to grab, and I just kind of fell in the pond.
Yeah.
And your phone.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, and I also lost my old phone when I was with Michael at the UGA Odin Pond, the river cooter that's in our icon right now. I dropped my phone while trying to catch her. So don't have good
One of the
experiences with catching turtles and technology.
Yep.
one of the worst for me. I found this red-eared slider just crossing a part of the highway around here. No water anywhere nearby. Just an adult, healthy, gravid red-eared slider just crossing the road. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna take this home, and I don't want to reproducing in this because there's a pond here, like south of me, that is just full of sliders. But this was nowhere near that, and I'm like, I don't want the slider plague to spread too much farther here. So, I just decided to take her home, and that was the meanest, most like awful turtle I've ever experienced. One time I was on a call with one of our other friends, and I was multitasking. I wasn't paying attention. I was cleaning out the cage, and I had the slider in my hand, and she like turned around and bit my finger. Like you see the knuckle, like right here. She managed to bite the skin and go through it in both directions. Like both the cusps on both ends went through it, and she would not let go for like 20 minutes, and it was the most horrible pain. Eventually, I had to just like rip my skin out, and she just tore it. Like it was just the most horrible wound. And yeah, I think like one other experience, kind of just similarly as bad, is I had just found the most perfectly preserved painted turtle shell, like beautiful, all the color and everything was preserved, and I was right by some rocks, and I went to go after this water snake that went in the rocks, and like something out of a cartoon, I just watched. Like I moved this rock, and out of all the places it could have went, the painted turtle shell was sitting there, and it just rolled over and just completely just obliterated the turtle shell. I was like, okay. That was depressing, but
I think the funniest one I ever saw was when we were with Kevin Brazy a few years back. We pulled out a slider. There was a slider in the canal, and he was trying to figure out. It was a weird looking slider. I don't think it was an integrate or anything, but it just had a weird pattern. And he was trying to figure out what was going on with it, and he rotated it to the point. Jack and Wyatt were off somewhere else. I was standing right there, and he rotated it right where he wasn't paying attention, and it bit right straight on his nipple. And it was hanging there for like 2 minutes, and he's trying to get it off, and he just doesn't know what he has to do, and he's just like, he was so laid back, and he's just like, "Oh man," I just thought that was so funny.
that was hilarious.
It's funny because we all know
move.
Kevin, so that makes it better.
Yeah. But yeah, that was hilarious. For me personally, when we were at Madagascar, we were cutting open the dead. There were very few dead tortoises, but there were some of them just in the confiscation that big. You're going to have that. And we were dissecting them to look at what caused it. And I was cutting it open. Like you actually have to use a chisel to get the bridge to break. So you've got to chisel the bridge. And I was using a scalpel on the bridge, and it sliced my hand. So that was a little bit scary. That's probably the worst experience I've had, because I was trying to get that unnotched, and I wasn't as good with that kind of thing as I am now, but that's for me, I guess. All right, we can go to the next question for Greg here.
Oh, from me?
All right. I don't know if we wanted to ask
Michael, do you want me to just ask my other one, and then we'll
Sure.
go down like that?
Yeah.
All right. Which two western drainages have 3 sympatric Sternotherus species?
The pearl, or the Pascagoula for sure. The Pascagoula.
It's those two, but I think there's others.
The pearl, the Pascagoula, and I'm trying to remember the other one.
No, I think you had it, the pearl and Pascagoula, but
Oh, I thought you said which 3.
No, I said 2. You had those 2.
Oh, okay. I
think
thought
there
you
could
said
be
3
more, but
drainages.
I know
was
it's at
like,
least those 2.
yeah,
And you
because
got
those have peltifer.
Yep. They got a weird assemblage. They got the odoratus, peltifer, and the carinatus. So it's like
Yeah.
the odoratus are normally at the bottom, but now they're even lower on the totem pole. With they got
Yeah,
even less to pick from.
You almost never see them together. I think Grover found one place where you can find peltifer and the carinatus together. So it's kind of interesting.
They only it's technically possible, but doesn't really happen.
Yeah,
All
they partition the habitat.
Go ahead, Greg. Hit us up with the next.
Let's see. I'm just going to go off the top of my head. I had a good one. It was dude, I'm getting old, so I forget stuff. It was like right there. It was based on like a paper that just came out. Oh, okay. So this is what I was going to ask you guys. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has announced they have plans to protect, give threatened listing to the Pearl River map turtle. What other map turtles are going to be listed based on similarity of appearance?
I mean, I guess, like, do you want the species or just the group?
It's like I think in the announcement from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, I think they announced 3 other species based on similarity of appearance.
I mean, is it other? It's going to be others in the megacephalic clade, I'd assume.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like maybe Pulchra, Gibbonsii, Ernsti. I might have missed one. If it was 3, then I don't know.
Yeah, actually, sorry. Yeah, now that you said that, it's actually 4.
Oh, so Barbarii too, or
yeah. So yeah, they're gonna list Gibbonsii, obviously, because Gibbonsii and Parlensis look almost identical, and then out from that, Pulchra, and then Ernsti, and then even Barbarii, which to most of us, we can tell the difference, but I guess for from a legal perspective and people inspecting stuff, they can't tell the difference, so they're just going to list all of them kind of under one thing.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic. I mean, it's like some people there's a lot of different feelings on that. And
Michael, did you want to get into yours, and maybe we can try and do a bit of like a speed round?
Sure. Yeah, we can do some speed. Okay, so all right. So how many species? This one's kind of related to the last one. How many species of graptomes are there? This one's also, I guess, like anything in the range, because that kind of thing changes a lot. But
yeah,
roughly.
God, you're gonna have to make me I didn't memorize that fact, so I'm gonna have to count them in my head. But you got
Well, this would be a good time to bring.
I'm gonna just ballpark it and say 20. And I know I'm going to be wrong because 20 is too round of a number, but I'm just going to say 20.
So I've seen 14 cited.
Okay, yeah.
But I guess I don't know.
I mean, are they separating the black knobs, or are they lumped into one? Because remember there was Delta Cola and Nigrinota.
I guess taxa might be closer to 20, but 14. Yeah. I think 14 species.
Okay.
But I think it's around 14, but anywhere in the bottom. Yeah. Okay. I guess I can just go to the next question. We can just clean out our questions, and then we can go back to if you want. Sure. Or let's go. Well, I'll pass it on to you, Greg. Hit us with the next one, Greg.
Hit you guys with another one?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the newest recognized species of musk turtle?
Intermedius, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you beat me to it. All right. So, okay, Michael, do you want to do your? This is our 4th one, right?
Sure. Yeah. Let's just go with Jason. You and Ken do it. We're good.
Okay. I could go first, I guess. So, what's the genus and species name of the pickerel frog?
Lithobates.
halfway there.
I've got them in my backyard, literally. They were calling the other day. Did I give up? I can't remember.
It's Lithobates palustris, so
okay.
You almost had it.
Yeah. Is there still like a southern and a northern also?
I'm unsure.
Okay.
All right, Greg. 5th question.
Let's see. I had on name a species of tortoise that builds a nest.
Oh.
Minoria, like Emmys, like isn't it? Don't they build nests? I think.
Yeah, pretty much any Minoria will build a nest. So you had like 3 possible options there.
Yeah, they'll like build it and like defend it too, like, which is
Yeah.
very unusual. But I just remember
All right,
that.
Ken. Your turn, Ken.
Which taxon of painted turtles have the worst tolerance to oxygen deprivation?
The painted turtles?
Yeah, which taxon?
This is like
the worst tolerance to oxygen deprivation. I would probably go with the dorsalis.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
They as being in the southern part of the range, they don't need to hibernate or brumate, as long as the other groups.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're good to go. Well, thanks for coming on, Greg. This has been awesome.
Great.
I think this is a great discussion, and I guess I can turn over to guys for any last thoughts here, and if you want to say anything.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I know it's been like nearly 2 hours of your time, but we really do appreciate you.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
We try to
keep
it.
You guys for having me.
We try to keep it under an hour and 30 minutes, but it's hard to keep it like that when we have you here. So
sorry. I mean, I get going and I can keep going. Michael and Jack have been around me, and they know that, kind of once you open it up, it just keeps coming out. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like we could we could go on all day if like time wasn't a restraint. We could just there's no limit to how much we could talk about and what detail we could get into with it. But
no, it's just endless.
That's actually the most difficult part of doing this is like, oh, we have plenty of time to do it, but then like you get carried. We get so deep.
If only school and work wasn't a thing.
Yeah,
exactly. I was gonna say we're trying to make it down to the Santa Fe project next week, so we all have to get stuff tightened up. But thank you so much.
Let me know. I can maybe try and make the drive.
Oh, actually,
I was gonna say if you could, like, I think that. Yeah, man. We'll talk more about that off the recording. Like,
let's do it. Well, thanks for coming on. I gotta just plug the Turtle Room right now. We are officially going to announce our. This is the first time we've talked about this, but we are partnered with the Turtle Room, and they're generously sponsoring us. They've given us access. They're kind of covering the cost of this program. Anthony and Steve, the guys that kind of the brains behind that operation, are amazing guys and just awesome and super supportive. So we're really happy to be working with them. We're also going to be setting up what we're calling a CheloniaCast student fund, where we're going to be taking donation box through their website to build up a fund over time for potentially sponsoring student research. So that should be cool, but it's not up yet. But when it is, we'll talk about that and we'll bring that here. But thanks again to Greg from GregsTurtleHaven for coming on. Make sure to check out his YouTube page and Instagram. A lot of cool stuff up there, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you guys.
All right.